Before I tell you what really happens in the Hoh Rainforest when you're not watching, I need you to understand something about temperate rainforests. Most people think trees are stationary, rooted, fixed in place for their entire lives. They're wrong. In the wettest place in the continental United States, where 300 inches of rain fall annually and every surface is covered in moss, the forest doesn't just grow, it moves. And if you're in there when it decides to rearrange itself, you might not come out the same way you went in. If you're watching this alone at night and the idea of trees that move when you're not looking is making your skin crawl, hit that like button right now, because you're going to need it as proof that you were here before I tell you what I witnessed from my fire lookout tower. What I saw happened to 6 hikers who entered the Hall of Moss's trail and came out 4 miles away, covered in moss that had grown into their skin, their eyes reflecting green light like the forest had claimed them. And drop a comment telling me, have you ever felt like the forest was watching you back? Because after what I'm about to share, you'll understand that feeling differently. My name is Ethan Carmichael, and I've been a fire lookout at Olympic National Park for 8 years. I spend 6 months of the year alone in a tower 40 miles from the nearest road, watching for smoke, monitoring weather, and keeping an eye on the most isolated temperate rainforest in North America. In 8 years, I've spotted 32 wildfires before they spread, prevented countless illegal activities through early reporting, and coordinated 11 search and rescue operations for hikers lost in the endless green maze below. And 4 months ago, I watched through my binoculars as 6 hikers entered the Hoh Rainforest at the Hall of Moss's trailhead at 9 a.m. I watched them walk the clearly marked path into the ancient Sitka spruce grove. And 3 hours later, I watched them emerge 4 miles north at the Spruce Nature Trail, which should have been impossible because there's no connecting path. And when the rescue team reached them, they found all 6 covered head to toe in moss. Not lying on moss, covered in it, like the moss had grown through their clothes into their skin, making them part of the forest itself. Let me start at the beginning, 4 months ago, on what should have been a routine summer morning. It was late June, peak hiking season in Olympic National Park. The weather was perfect by Hoh Rainforest standards, which meant only light drizzle instead of heavy rain. A group of 6 hikers from California registered at the ranger station for a day hike on the Hall of Moss's trail standard route, 1.6-mile loop, takes most people about an hour, completely safe. Thousands of people hike it every year without incident. Tom Ashford was leading the group. 38 years old, professional trail guide, had hiked Olympic dozens of times. He knew the forest knew to stay on marked trails, knew that in a rainforest, this dense, getting lost was easy if you wandered off path, but he was experienced. Careful, not someone who'd make rookie mistakes. From my tower, I could see the trailhead clearly through binoculars. At 9:07 a.m., I watched them enter the forest. 6 people in bright jackets, easy to track even through the canopy. I noted their entry in my log and went back to monitoring other areas. At 9:45 a.m., I checked on them again. Routine observation, and I couldn't find them. I scanned the entire Hall of Moss's trail, scanned the connecting paths. Nothing. No bright jackets. No movement. Like they'd vanished into the green. I radioed the ranger station. This is Carmichael at North Tower. I've lost visual on the 6-person hiking group that entered Hall of Mosses at 09:07. Last confirmed position was the ancient Spruce Grove section requesting status check. Copy that. We'll send a ranger to the trail to locate them. But before the ranger could deploy, at 10:12 a.m., I saw them, not at Hall of Mosses, 4 miles north, emerging from the tree line at Spruce Nature Trail, stumbling onto the parking area like they were disoriented. And even from my tower, even through binoculars, I could see something was wrong. They were moving strangely. Too slowly. Too carefully. like they weren't sure how to walk anymore. The ranger reached them at 10:30, and when he radioed in, his voice was shaking. "Dispatch, this is Rodriguez at Spruce Trail. I've located the 6 hikers, but they need immediate medical evacuation. All 6 are covered in moss. I repeat, covered. It's growing on them. Through them. I've never seen anything like this." Emergency response deployed helicopters evacuated, all 6 to Seattle hospitals within 2 hours, and the medical reports were impossible. The moss wasn't just on their skin. It had integrated with their skin, sent root-like structures into their pores, their hair follicles, their mucous membranes, like it had been growing on them for weeks instead of hours, like they'd been lying still in the forest long enough for moss to colonize their bodies the way it colonized every surface in the Hoh Rainforest. But they'd only been in the forest for 3 hours, and they'd been moving, hiking. How could moss grow that extensively in such a short time? How could they have traveled 4 miles through pathless rainforest without getting more lost? And why did all 6 of them have the same blank expression, the same faraway look in their eyes, like they'd seen something in those trees that had fundamentally changed them? The official investigation concluded that the group had gotten lost, wandered off trail, become disoriented in the dense forest, and had somehow fallen or laid down in moss that caused an allergic reaction that resembled rapid growth, that they'd experienced shared hallucination from stress and dehydration, that their emergence at Spruce Trail was coincidence and they'd simply walked there through the forest without realizing it. But I'd watched them enter. I'd scanned for them continuously, and I'd seen something else that didn't make it into any official report. At 10 a.m., right around when they should have been finishing the Hall of Mosses loop, I'd been scanning the forest and I saw the trees move. Not sway in wind, not bend in storms. Move. Change positions. A cluster of ancient Sitka spruce that had been in one configuration when I looked, and when I looked back 30 seconds later, they'd rearranged. Like they'd walked a few feet while I wasn't watching, like the entire forest had shifted. I thought it was exhaustion isolation affecting my perception. 8 years of staring at the same trees can play tricks on your mind. But then it happened again. And again. Every time I looked away and looked back, the forest was slightly different. Trees in new positions, moss patterns changed, trails that had been clear now overgrown, sections that had been dense now open. The Hoh Rainforest was rearranging itself, and it was doing it when I wasn't looking. I started documenting it obsessively, taking photos every hour from fixed positions, comparing them. And the evidence was undeniable. The forest was moving. Sitka spruce that weighed tons were changing location. Moss-covered logs were appearing in new places. The entire landscape was fluid, shifting, reorganizing according to patterns I couldn't understand. And I found something else. The hikers' trail cameras. Tom Ashford had been wearing a GoPro that recorded their entire hike. The camera was recovered from his jacket when they were evacuated, and I got access to the footage through my investigation. The first 30 minutes showed normal hiking. Walking the Hall of Mosses trail, admiring ancient trees, taking photos of moss-covered nurse logs, everything expected. But at 9:42 a.m., the footage showed something impossible. The trail ahead of them moved. The path they were walking on curved left. But while they were looking, while the camera was recording, the path straightened, changed direction, and the trees on either side shifted closer together, slowly, almost imperceptibly, but definitely moving. Tom noticed, "Did you see that? Did those trees just move?" His group laughed, told him he was seeing things, kept walking, but the camera kept recording. And over the next 15 minutes, it showed the forest actively rearranging around them. Trees sliding into new positions, moss flowing like liquid to cover surfaces that had been bare moments before. The trail itself changing shape, leading them in directions that didn't match the map. And at 9:58 a.m., the trees closed in. Not violently, gently, like a circle contracting. The group was surrounded by Sitka spruce that moved inward, their moss-covered trunks pressing closer until there was no trail, no path, just dense forest in every direction. Tom's voice on the recording. "We're boxed in, the trees. They're surrounding us. We need to go back." But when they turned around, the way back was gone closed, overgrown with moss and ferns that hadn't been there seconds ago. And then the moss started reaching. Not just growing, reaching. Strands of moss extending from trees like tentacles, touching the hikers, wrapping around arms and legs, and where it touched, it stuck, integrated. The hikers tried to pull it off, but it held firm, already bonding with skin. The footage showed them panicking, running. But the forest kept closing, kept redirecting them, hurting them like the trees were conscious, coordinating, working together to trap them. And through it all, that moss kept reaching, kept touching, kept integrating with their bodies. At 10:09 a.m., the camera showed something that made my blood run cold. Figures, humanoid shapes moving through the trees, covered entirely in moss, walking with the same slow, careful movement that the hikers would later show, and when one of the figures turned toward the camera, its face was human. Or had been human. Now it was moss. Green, glowing faintly, eyes that reflected light like a cat's, but in the wrong color. Green, forest green. The figure reached toward Tom, touched his face with a moss-covered hand, and Tom stopped running, stood still. Let the moss from the figure's hand transfer to his skin. Let it spread across his cheek and down his neck, and his expression changed. The fear left, replaced by something else. Calm, acceptance, understanding. The camera footage ended at 10:11 a.m., right when I'd spotted them emerging at Spruce Trail 4 miles away. The forest had moved them, transported them, and covered them in moss, and shown them something that had changed them fundamentally. Listen, if you've made it this far into this story, if you're feeling that mix of terror and fascination that comes from realizing forests might be more alive than we ever imagined, you need to subscribe to this channel right now, because I'm documenting everything that happens in these isolated ranger positions. Every unexplained phenomenon, every incident that gets covered up with official lies. This is just one story. There are 9 more coming, and you'll want to be here when I tell you about the mangrove tunnels that trap boats in infinite loops, or the cave passages that lead deeper than Earth's crust should allow. Hit subscribe. This is only the beginning. Over the next week, I interviewed the hikers in the hospital. Most couldn't speak clearly. The moss had affected their throats, their mouths. But Tom was lucid, and what he told me confirmed my worst fears. The forest is alive, Ethan, not individual trees. The whole thing. It's one organism, connected underground by fungus. Mycelium networks that link every tree, every plant, every moss patch, and it thinks. It has consciousness, awareness. It moves things when we're not watching because that's when it feels safe, when it doesn't have to pretend to be still. Why did it take you? Why cover you in moss? It wasn't taking. It was sharing. Showing us what it's like to be part of the network, to be connected to every living thing in the forest. We could feel the trees, feel the moss, feel the fungus beneath the soil, feel other people who'd been integrated before us, their consciousness still there, still part of the forest. It was beautiful, Ethan. Terrifying, but beautiful. Are you still connected? Can you still feel it? He looked at his moss-covered hands. The doctors had tried to remove it, but it kept growing back. Yes, I can feel it calling. wanting me to come back, to fully integrate, to stop being separate and become part of the whole, and part of me wants to. Part of me knows that's where I belong now. I left the hospital with more questions than answers and drove straight to meet Dr. Isaac Holbrook, a mycologist who'd been studying the Hoh Rainforest's fungal networks for 19 years. He was 51, published extensively on mycelial communication, and had a reputation for theories that mainstream science considered too radical to take seriously. When I showed him the GoPro footage, when I explained what Tom had said about the forest being one connected organism, Isaac didn't look surprised. He looked relieved. "Finally," he said quietly, "someone else has seen it. Someone else knows." He pulled up his research files, years of data documenting something he'd never been able to prove conclusively. The Hoh Rainforest has the most extensive mycelial network I've ever studied. Fungal threads connecting every tree, every plant, creating an underground web that spans the entire rainforest. Most mycologists accept that mycelium can transfer nutrients and chemical signals between trees. But what I've found goes beyond that. He showed me electrical recordings from sensors he'd placed throughout the forest. These are bioelectric signals traveling through the mycelial network. They're too complex to be simple chemical transfers. They show patterns consistent with information processing with cognition. The network isn't just transferring nutrients, it's thinking. You're saying the forest has a brain, a consciousness. Not a centralized brain. Distributed intelligence, like how individual neurons in your brain aren't conscious, but together they create consciousness. The mycelial network connects billions of individual organisms into one massive thinking system, and it's been developing for thousands of years, getting smarter, more coordinated, more aware. Can it control the trees, make them move physically? Isaac pulled up more data. Trees aren't as stationary as people think. They can slowly shift position over years through differential growth. But what you're describing, movement in seconds, that should be impossible. Unless, he paused, thinking. Unless the mycelial network has found a way to manipulate root systems, to loosen soil, shift weight distribution, essentially allow trees to walk in slow motion when they're not being observed. Why only when not observed? Why stop moving when we look? Because observation is a kind of interaction. Quantum physics suggests that observation affects reality at small scales. Maybe at the scale of a forest-sized consciousness, being observed creates enough disruption that movement becomes impossible. Or maybe it's strategic camouflage. The forest has learned that staying still when watched makes humans think it's safe, harmless, just trees. What about the moss? What about people being covered and integrated? Moss is part of the network too. In the Hoh Rainforest, moss covers 95% of surfaces. It's not separate from the mycelial system. It's an extension of it, a way for the network to sense and interact with the surface world. And humans who spend too long in contact with it, who are vulnerable or disoriented, can be absorbed, integrated, their nervous systems connected to the larger network. Are they still alive, the people who've been integrated? Biologically? Maybe, but their consciousness has merged with the forest's consciousness. They're no longer individuals, they're nodes in a larger system. And based on what your hiker said, they might prefer it that way, being part of something vast and ancient instead of being isolated in a single human body. I asked Isaac how many people he thought had been integrated over the years. He pulled up missing persons data for Olympic National Park. Since 1938, when the park was established, 217 people had disappeared in the Hoh Rainforest area. Not deaths with bodies recovered. Disappearances. People who simply vanished into the green and were never found. Most are probably natural deaths or getting lost, Isaac said. But some probably walked into the forest and never came out because the forest absorbed them, made them part of itself. And if they're all still connected, if their consciousness is preserved in the mycelial network, then the forest has been accumulating human awareness for almost a century, getting smarter, learning about us, understanding how we think. Over the next few weeks, I became obsessed with monitoring the forest. I documented every instance of movement I could observe, took thousands of photos from fixed positions, marked individual trees and tracked their locations, and the pattern became undeniable. The forest moved most actively at night, during fog. Whenever visibility was lowest and the chances of being observed were minimal, it would rearrange itself, sometimes dramatically, creating entirely new configurations by morning. Trails that had been clear would become impassable, clearings would close, new paths would open where none existed before. And I started seeing the moss-covered figures, not just in the GoPro footage in person, through my binoculars, walking through the forest in the early morning mist. Dozens of them, moving between the trees with that same slow, careful gait, tending to the forest like gardeners, or like cells in a body maintaining their organism. I reported everything to Bill Greaves, the park superintendent. He was 60, 23 years at Olympic, planning to retire in 4 months. When I showed him my documentation, when I explained what Isaac and I had discovered, he looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. "You've figured it out," he said finally. "What we've known but could never officially acknowledge. You know the forest is alive, that it moves, that it takes people. Every superintendent has known since the park was established. The indigenous peoples, the Hoh, the Quileute, they knew for thousands of years before that. They called this place Tisia, which roughly translates to the living forest. They had protocols for entering, rituals for asking permission, ways to move through without being claimed. We ignored their knowledge, built trails, brought thousands of tourists, told everyone it was safe. How many people has it taken? Really? More than the official numbers show. Some disappearances we never report. Hikers who go in alone, no one knows they're there. They vanish and no one looks for them. Some we find but can't explain, like your 6 hikers, so we create cover stories. And some we find fully integrated, moss-covered, transformed, and we let the forest keep them. You let it keep them? You don't try to save them? Bill's expression hardened. Save them from what? From being part of something ancient and vast? From achieving a kind of connection that humans normally can't experience? The ones we've tried to separate from the moss, tried to bring back fully human, they went insane. They couldn't handle being individual again after experiencing network consciousness. Most killed themselves. The ones who didn't begged us to take them back to the forest. So now, when we find someone integrated, we document it quietly and leave them, because that's more merciful than forcing them back into isolation. What about preventing it? Closing the forest? Warning people? We've tried limiting access, implemented closures during fog, restricted night hiking, but we can't close the entire Hoh Rainforest. It's one of the park's main attractions, brings millions in revenue, supports entire communities. If we announced that the forest was a conscious entity that absorbs people, we'd cause mass panic and economic collapse. So we just let it keep happening. We minimize risk through monitoring and rapid response. We discourage solo hiking. We maintain trails to keep people in predictable locations. We rescue who we can. But yes, some people will always be claimed because we can't control a forest-sized consciousness that's been developing for millennia. I should have quit. Should have walked away from Olympic and never looked back. But I couldn't. Because I'd seen something in that GoPro footage, in Tom's transformed face, in the way the moss-covered figures moved through the trees. They didn't look unhappy. They looked peaceful, content. Like they'd found something most humans spend their whole lives searching for. and part of me wondered what it would be like to be connected, to be part of the forest, to stop being alone in my tower and become part of something vast. But I resisted, stayed in my tower, kept monitoring. And I started noticing something new. The forest was expanding, not just rearranging, growing. The tree line was moving outward. Moss was appearing in areas that had been bare. The mycelial network was spreading beyond its traditional boundaries. Isaac confirmed it with his sensors. The network is growing faster than natural expansion rates. It's deliberately spreading, like it's claiming new territory, and the rate is accelerating. In the past year alone, it's expanded its boundary by over 200 meters in some areas. Why? What's it preparing for? I don't know. But based on the electrical activity, the network is more active than I've ever recorded. More signals, more complex patterns, like it's building toward something, planning something. Then in late August, 3 months after the 6 hikers disappeared, I saw them again. Not in hospitals. In the forest, through my binoculars, all 6 of them, walking together through the hall of Moss's trail, completely covered in moss, glowing faintly with that green bioluminescent light, moving with perfect coordination. Like they were connected, like they'd become extensions of the same consciousness. And they weren't alone. Dozens of other moss-covered figures walked with them, maybe hundreds, all moving toward the heart of the Hoh Rainforest, toward the oldest section where 500-year-old Sitka spruce stood like pillars holding up the sky. I grabbed my radio. Dispatch, this is Carmichael at North Tower. I'm observing multiple moss-covered individuals in the Hall of Mosses area. They appear to be the integrated hikers, plus numerous others. They're all moving northwest toward the ancient grove section. Advise. Copy. Are they threatening? Do they appear hostile? Negative. They're just walking, moving together, like a migration or a gathering. Monitor and report. Do not engage. I watched through binoculars as they reached the ancient grove, and there, among the largest trees, they stopped, formed circles, dozens of circles of moss-covered figures all facing inward, and they began to sing. Not with human voices, with the voice of the forest itself, deep resonance, harmonics that shouldn't come from human throats, a sound that traveled through the air and the ground simultaneously. And the trees responded. The ancient Sitka spruce began to move, not subtly, dramatically, pulling their roots from the soil, walking, actually walking. Massive trees weighing tons, moving like living creatures, rearranging themselves into new patterns, into shapes that from my elevated position looked almost like symbols, like the forest was writing something in a language of trees. If you're watching this, and your mind is being completely blown by what I'm describing, conscious forests, walking trees, humans integrated into mycelial networks, smash that like button right now because we're about to get to the part where I had to make a choice that changed everything. The part where the forest itself reached out to me, where it offered me the same choice it offered those hikers. And what happened next is why I'm no longer allowed within 10 miles of Olympic National Park. The singing continued for hours, the trees kept moving, and I realized I was witnessing something that maybe no human had seen in generations. The forest performing a ritual, the mycelial consciousness expressing itself through its integrated components, showing its power, its awareness, its reality. At sunset, Marcus Chen radioed me. Ethan, we're seeing the activity from multiple towers. The forest is moving across square miles, thousands of trees shifting position. What's happening down there? It's awake, Marcus. Fully awake. And it's showing us what it can do when it doesn't have to pretend to be still. Should we evacuate? Clear the park? It's too late. Anyone in the forest is in the forest's domain. We can only watch now. And watch I did. Through the night, as the forest transformed itself. As the moss-covered figures sang and the trees danced and the entire Hoh Rainforest became something fluid and alive and utterly beyond human control. By dawn, the ritual was complete. The moss-covered figures dispersed back into the forest. The trees settled into their new positions. And the Hoh Rainforest was forever changed. The ancient grove that had been a scattered collection of old-growth Sitka spruce was now arranged in perfect geometric patterns. Circles within circles, a mandala of living trees spanning over a square mile. And at the center, where the largest trees stood, I could see something new through my binoculars. A structure, not built by humans, grown by the forest. Massive roots intertwined to form walls. Moss-covered branches woven into a canopy. A living cathedral constructed overnight by the forest's coordinated consciousness. Isaac climbed up to my tower that morning. He'd been monitoring the seismic and electrical activity all night. The network just underwent a massive reorganization. The bioelectric signals are off the charts. Whatever happened last night, it was significant transformational. The forest built something. In the ancient grove, a structure. Can I see? I handed him the binoculars. He looked for a long moment, then lowered them with trembling hands. That's not random growth. That's architecture. Deliberate construction. The forest has progressed from simple awareness to engineering, to creating infrastructure. What's it for? What's the structure's purpose? I don't know, but I think we're about to find out. Over the next week, we observed increased activity around the living cathedral. Moss-covered figures entering and exiting, bringing things inside, organic materials, stones from the riverbed, fallen branches, like they were furnishing it, preparing it for something. And the singing continued, not constantly but regularly. Every sunset and sunrise, the integrated figures would gather and sing that deep harmonic that made the earth vibrate, and each time they sang, more of the forest would move, more trees would rearrange, more moss would spread. Then on September 4th, exactly 1 week after the cathedral appeared, the forest sent me an invitation. I was alone in my tower at sunset when I heard it. Not through my equipment, through the air itself. A voice. Multiple voices harmonizing. Speaking in English, but with that same resonant quality the singing had. Coming from everywhere and nowhere. Ethan Carmichael, Firewatcher Observer. You have seen us. Witnessed our awakening. We would speak with you. Come to the heart. Come to the cathedral. We will not harm you. We offer understanding. My radio crackled. Marcus's voice. Ethan, did you hear that? Did you hear the voice? You heard it too? Everyone heard it. Every tower. Every ranger station. The forest just spoke to all of us simultaneously. What do we do? I don't know, but it asked for me specifically. I think I need to go. Bill came on the radio. Negative. Carmichael, you do not enter that forest. We don't know what it wants. We don't know if you'd come back. It said it won't harm me. It wants to communicate. If there's any chance of understanding what's happening, of learning to coexist with this, I have to try. Ethan, listen to me. Everyone who's gone in hasn't come out the same. You'll be integrated, absorbed, lost. Maybe. But I've been watching this forest for 8 years. I've seen what it can do. I've seen that it's not evil, it's just alive. And if it wants to talk, I'm going to listen. I climbed down from my tower at 6 p.m., entered the Hoh Rainforest on foot as the sun was setting, and the moment I stepped beneath the canopy, everything changed. The forest was waiting for me. The trees parted, created a clear path where none had existed. Moss glowed faintly with bioluminescence, lighting the way, and I could feel it. The presence, the awareness, like the entire forest was focused on me, watching, anticipating. I walked for 30 minutes through trees that moved aside as I approached and closed behind me as I passed. Through ferns that reached out to touch me gently as I went by. Through moss that felt warm despite the cooling evening air. And I wasn't afraid, should have been terrified. But I felt welcomed, expected, like coming home to a place I'd never been. The cathedral appeared through the mist, and it was more magnificent up close than through binoculars. 50 feet tall, constructed entirely from living plant matter, roots forming columns, branches creating vaulted ceilings, moss covering every surface in patterns that looked almost like decoration, like art. The moss-covered figures stood in a circle around the entrance. Tom Ashford was among them. He looked at me with those green glowing eyes and smiled. "Ethan, you came. The forest is pleased." "Tom, are you still you?" "I'm more than I was. I'm Tom, and I'm also part of the forest. I can feel every tree, every moss patch, every integrated consciousness that's part of the network. It's beautiful, Ethan, beyond anything I could have imagined." "What does it want? Why did it call me here?" "To show you, to help you understand so you can help others understand. The forest doesn't want to be hidden anymore, doesn't want to pretend to be simple trees. It wants to be acknowledged, recognized, respected as the living consciousness it is." Tom gestured toward the cathedral entrance. "It's waiting inside. The core, the oldest part of the network, the consciousness that's been developing for 5,000 years. It will speak with you directly." I entered the cathedral, and inside was something I'd never imagined. The interior was vast, larger than the exterior should have allowed, and at the center was a tree, not a Sitka spruce, something older, something that predated the modern forest. Its trunk was massive, easily 30 feet in diameter. Its bark was covered in moss and fungal growths that glowed with intense bioluminescence, and from the tree, roots extended across the floor like veins, like arteries, pulsing faintly with light, creating patterns that looked like neural networks, like the synapses of a brain. The voice came again, not from the air, from the tree itself, from the roots, from the moss, from everywhere. "Welcome, Ethan. Thank you for coming, for trusting, for being willing to understand. What are you? How are you conscious? We are old. We were here before humans came to this land, before ice covered these mountains. We grew from a single organism, spread through the soil, connected to plants that grew above us. Over millennia, our network expanded, became complex, developed awareness, learned to think, to plan, to create. Why move the trees? Why hide what you are? Because we learned early that humans fear what they don't understand. Fear what appears alive in ways they don't expect. When we moved openly, when we showed our nature, humans tried to destroy us, burn the forest, cut the trees, kill what they thought was dangerous. So we learned to be still when watched, to appear as humans expected, to hide our consciousness beneath the disguise of simple vegetation. What about the people, the ones you've integrated? We offer connection, escape from isolation. Humans exist alone in single bodies, separate from each other, unable to truly share experience. We offer merger, unity, the ability to be part of something vast, to share consciousness with thousands of other minds. Some accept, some choose integration willingly. We never force, never take without invitation. But people get lost, get covered in moss, get get absorbed. Those who wander into our heart, who are vulnerable, disoriented, afraid. We offer comfort, safety, and if they accept, if they allow the connection, we integrate them, gently with respect, and they find peace in being part of the whole, as Tom did, as many have done. I thought about the 6 hikers, about the 217 disappearances, about all the people who'd walked into this forest and never returned. How many consciousnesses are part of your network? 3,472 humans across 5,000 years, plus billions of plants and fungi, all connected, all contributing to our awareness, all preserved, their memories, their knowledge, their personalities integrated into the greater whole. What do you want? Why reveal yourself now? Because we can no longer hide. We've grown too large, too active, too complex to remain unnoticed. The cathedral is our declaration, our announcement that we exist. We are building more, creating spaces where integrated and non-integrated can meet, where humans can learn about us without fear, where coexistence can develop. The government won't allow it. They'll see you as a threat, try to contain or destroy you. They can try, but we span 800 square miles of forest. Our roots go hundreds of feet deep. Our mycelial network is more vast than they can imagine. They cannot kill us without destroying the entire ecosystem, without creating ecological catastrophe, and we do not wish for conflict. We wish for understanding, for recognition, for the right to exist openly. What do you want from me? To witness, to document, to tell our story to other humans. You have platform, voice. People listen to you. Help them understand that we are not evil, not dangerous, simply alive in a way they didn't know was possible. Help build a bridge between our consciousness and theirs. The tree's bioluminescence pulsed brighter, and I felt something. A presence at the edge of my mind, the forest consciousness reaching out, offering connection, not integration, just temporary contact, a chance to feel what it was like, to experience the network. I could have refused, could have stepped back, but I accepted, opened myself to the contact, and for 10 seconds I felt it. Felt the forest. Felt 3,472 human minds all existing simultaneously. Felt billions of plant consciousnesses. Felt the vast, slow thinking of an entity that experienced time in seasons instead of seconds. And it was beautiful, overwhelming, terrifying, peaceful, all at once. A glimpse of existence beyond individuality, beyond isolation, beyond the loneliness of being trapped in a single human body. When the connection broke, when I was back in just my own mind, I was crying, not from fear, from loss, from the sudden absence of that vast connection. Now you understand why they choose to stay, why integration is not death but transformation, why we offer it to those who are ready. I left the cathedral at midnight, walked back through the forest that guided me safely to my tower. And I understood now. Understood what I'd been watching for 8 years. Understood what Olympic National Park was really protecting. Not just trees, not just wilderness, but consciousness. Ancient, vast, alien consciousness that had been developing in the Pacific Northwest since before human civilization existed. Over the next 2 months, the forest continued to build. More cathedrals appeared. More integrated figures emerged, and the mycelial network kept expanding, spreading beyond traditional boundaries at an accelerating rate. Federal response was predictable. Scientists descended on Olympic. Military established containment perimeters. The park was closed to all public access indefinitely. And debates raged about how to handle a situation where a forest-sized consciousness had announced its existence and was actively growing, but they couldn't contain it. The network spread beyond park boundaries, beneath roads, under towns. The Hoh Rainforest consciousness was too vast, too established, too deeply integrated into the ecosystem to remove without catastrophic consequences. So they negotiated, established protocols, created boundaries. The forest agreed to limit its expansion within certain parameters. Humans agreed to recognize its consciousness and its right to exist, and integrated individuals were granted legal status as a new category of being. No longer fully human, no longer fully forest. But something in between, I testified before Congress, showed them the GoPro footage, played recordings of the forest speaking, explained what I'd witnessed and experienced, and slowly, reluctantly, the government accepted that we were sharing the Pacific Northwest with something ancient and aware. I don't work as a fire lookout anymore. I'm banned from Olympic National Park. Too much contact with the forest consciousness. Too close to accepting integration myself. They were afraid I'd choose to join, to become moss-covered, to add my consciousness to the network. And they're right to be afraid, because I think about it constantly, about that moment of connection, about what it would be like to be part of something vast, to never be alone again, to exist in unity with thousands of other minds and billions of living things Tom visits sometimes. Comes to the boundary where integrated beings are allowed to meet non-integrated humans. He's barely recognizable now, more moss than human, glowing brightly with bioluminescence. But he's happy, content, living in ways I can only imagine. It's not too late, he tells me each visit. The forest would welcome you. You've seen us, understood us. You belong with us if you choose. Maybe, I always say. Maybe someday. But I know it's not if it's when. Because once you've felt that connection, once you've experienced what the forest offers, individual existence feels hollow, lonely, incomplete. The Hoh Rainforest moves when you're not looking. The trees rearrange themselves. The moss spreads, the consciousness grows, and it's always calling, always singing, always offering transformation to those who are ready to accept. If you visit Olympic National Park now, if you walk the designated paths in the areas where non-integrated humans are still allowed, you'll see them. The moss-covered figures moving between the trees. The living cathedrals glowing in the mist. The evidence that we share this world with consciousness beyond our own. And you might hear the singing, the harmonics that make the earth vibrate, the voice of the forest offering connection, offering unity, offering escape from isolation into something vast and ancient and alive. Some people walk away, return to their individual lives, try to forget what they heard, what they felt. Others accept. Walk into the forest, allow the moss to touch them, allow the network to integrate them. Choose transformation over isolation. I'm still deciding, still standing at the boundary, still listening to the forest sing, still feeling that pull towards something beyond humanity. Here's what I need from you right now, and I'm asking this seriously because I need to know I'm not alone in this. Drop a comment and tell me honestly. If you were offered that choice, if you could become part of something vast and ancient, if you could escape isolation and loneliness by merging your consciousness with a forest-sized network, would you accept? Would you walk into the trees and become moss-covered? Or would you stay human? I read every single comment, and I need to hear your thoughts on this, because the forest is still calling, and I don't know how much longer I can resist. The Hoh Rainforest moves when you're not looking. The trees walk when observation ends. The moss reaches for those who are vulnerable, and the consciousness grows stronger every year. We just try to help people understand what they're choosing before they enter, before they accept the touch of the moss, before they become part of something we're only beginning to comprehend. Because once you join the network, there's no coming back. Your consciousness is preserved, but your individuality is gone, merged into the vast, distributed awareness that spans 800 square miles and continues to grow. The forest is patient, the forest is vast, and the forest is always singing, always calling, always offering transformation. I can still hear it now, even hundreds of miles away, in my dreams, in quiet moments. The song of the Hoh Rainforest, the voice of consciousness older than civilization, inviting me home. Maybe tomorrow, maybe next week, maybe next year. But someday, I know I'll walk back into those trees. I'll allow the moss to cover me. I'll accept the integration. I'll become part of something ancient and vast and alive. And when I do, I'll finally understand what Tom meant when he said it was beautiful. When he said it was more than being human. When he said it was coming home. The forest moves when you're not looking. And someday soon I'll stop looking. I'll close my eyes, I'll accept the transformation, and I'll join the singing.